There's a lot of preparation going on.
Okay, we are
We're
live.
live. We're live. Amazing. Aaron, we've been planning this for what, 4 months? 6 months?
Yeah, we've been actually planning for that long, but mentally, I feel like it's been a longer time coming. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah. Amazing.
super exciting.
Amazing to be here. Yeah, very cool. I think we had 275 registrants for today's event. So if anybody thought that Research Ops was along with the rest of it, let me speak a little bit about why we did this. Rally Around was really about that notion of it's been a pretty tough time. Like pretty is an understatement for research and Research Ops in the last 2.5 to 3 years. And we felt it was time to celebrate the amazing work that's still going on. And the evolution that's happening in research operations, and that our industry is really thriving. So here we are rallying around Research Ops.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity to be able to elevate the voices of some awesome research ops leaders that are out there doing the hard work, the real work within their companies. And we're excited that you've all decided to take some time out of your workday to join us.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's I'm in Sydney. Why don't all of you pop where you're from? Oh, here we go. How are you from San Antonio? Sunny San Francisco. I'm in Sydney, and it's just past 6:30 a.m. So I'm feeling fresh and bright. Aaron, you're in New York, right?
I'm in New York, so 4:30 p.m. Just on the other side, still nice and sunny out, but the days are getting shorter little by little. It has begun.
Yeah, yeah. And ours are getting longer. Thanks for that.
Yes.
You've given the summer to us.
It's a great
So
balance
we've
of
got
time.
Columbus. Yeah, exactly. We've got Columbus, Ohio, Philly, Sacramento, Boise. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce all these right. We've got Shane. Hello, Shane, from SF. We've got Ewan from Auckland, New Zealand. Ewan, it must be bright and early for you as well. I think it's about an hour or two off my time. So well done for making it. Um, that's great. People from all over the world. Well,
Estonia, very nice.
oh, amazing. Oh, Ketu. Ketu is a Cha-Cha Club member. So lovely to see you here, Ketu. Um, they've got some amazing progressive digital stuff going on in Estonia and have for years. It's amazing. And Toronto. Well, we're about 2 minutes already in. We've got a really fantastic agenda to get through. So, Aaron, should we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, a quick introduction. My name is Kate Towsey, as you can see on my label there, bright and clear. And I'm the founder of the Cha-Cha Club, which is not a dance club. It is, in fact, a members club for research operations professionals. And all the presentations that you're going to see today are produced by Cha-Cha Club's members. We're all full-time Research Ops pros. Because we wanted to be really inclusive of everybody around the world, Cha-Cha Club's it's a global club. The videos have been produced as pre-recorded, but a lot of the speakers are here, and towards the end of the session, we'll have Casey and Jess Lewis and Casey. Well, we've got Casey Canlis and Casey Garland. They're confusing us, and Jess Lewis and a group of the presenters joining us to do a live Q&A. So stick around for that right at the end. Aaron, I'll hand the mic over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm Oren Friedman, one of the co-founders and CEO here at Rally. And we've been building nothing else but a research ops platform for the last 3+ years, hand in hand with nobody else but the incredible research ops community that you have here in front of you. We believe deeply that all great products start with research ops, and are honored to be partnering with Kate, Cha-Cha Club, to bring you the Rally Around series and once again elevate voices of the research ops leaders around the world that are doing incredible work defining this field and making massive impact within their organizations.
Fantastic. So we've got 6 bite-sized talks. When I say bite-sized, I mean that they're kind of 5 to 10 minutes, jam-packed with interesting information about a gnarly topic, which is how do you set up operations to democratize research? That kind of keyword, aside from artificial intelligence, of the last 5 to 10 years at least. That's been a word that's been kind of cooking up for a long time. So we've got Lauren backstage who's going to be helping us push buttons and things like that. Lauren's also from Rally. Lauren, let's dive into the first one. Let's kick it off.
Hey everyone, Carolyn Morgan here, and today we're going to be thinking about research democratization in a little talk that I titled Democracy is Dead, Long Live Democracy. And before we get too far into it, I just want to say that I've been thinking about democracy for well over 15 years. Basically, it was my career and my job until 2017. I earned a PhD in political science. I got that fancy piece of paper there. I was a Fulbright scholar at the Max Planck Institute. I've thought a lot about voter behavior and engagement in democratic systems. And so today we'll be taking some of those thinkings and those ideas and applying it to a research practice, because everybody keeps talking about research democratization and they're not giving us any definitions. They're not giving us any context as to what they mean when they say research, research democratization. And as a political scientist, naturally, I have some thoughts on a research democracy. I sent this little thought piece out into the world in April of 2023, hoping that it would start a conversation. What do we mean when we talk about research democracy? Is it enablement? Is it education? Do we really mean that everybody should be telling us how research should be conducted? And there was nothing. There was no conversation, no crowdsourcing. There was no grandiose definition of research democracy, and probably for good reason. You're probably thinking, well, you're the political scientist. You should come up with a definition. And that's a fair question. So I've been thinking about it for like the last year and a half. And I've been doing some reading and having big discussions and sometimes arguments. And that's the structure in this talk. Thinking about what is a research democracy, and when I think about that, something just lingers in my head. And that thing is this tweet from Erica Hall. She was talking about how it's weird to ask about democratization inside a hierarchical for-profit company when the only people who can really vote are the people who own stock, right? And my feeling is that democracy is not compatible, or research democracy is not compatible with the capitalistic-based system in which many of us find ourselves working. So from this logic, a research democracy just cannot exist. It is dead. But that then got me asking myself, why do so many people want this research democracy? And I realized that it's probably because a lot of people haven't spent the last 2 decades thinking about democracy from this theoretical level. And it also got me thinking about this talk I heard from Molly Stevens back in 2020, in which Molly talks about how we, as researchers, get so many demands for work. There's so much work to do that we're overworked, right? And there's so many research projects, we can't do them all. And so we end up, by that, we try and do a little bit of everything, and we become Joan of all trades and mistress of none. And what I realized is that some people are probably relying on this concept of democracy to help them tackle their workload. And they're doing this at the risk of cheapening their own expertise. So we're in this pickle because we don't want to cheapen the value of research, but we also don't want to be blockers, right? We rely on this idea of democracy and bringing people in to help us tackle this problem that we have. And at the same time that I was thinking about Molly's article and thinking about how we can make democracy work to help offset some of our workload, I came across this other article from around the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I realized that democracy is a catchword. We're stuck with this concept of research democratization because democracy is this thing that we grasp for. It's not actually a democracy that we're looking for. We're looking for this concept that is kind of ingrained in Western culture, something that we strive for. We want to make sure that we're including everybody because we don't want to be blockers and because we cannot do all the things that people are asking of us. And, we want people to care about research and we don't want to be too gatekeepy. And so there's this kind of budding of ideas where democracy is not compatible with this capitalistic system in which we're working, but also like we got too much work to do, so we need to have help. And so I know that some of you all, myself included, my team included, are experimenting with research democracy. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to be focusing on how to responsibly enact a research democracy in a hierarchical for-profit structure. And we're going to draw some findings in political science. So for the rest of this talk, we're going to think long live democracy. If you're damned and determined to have a research democracy, let's at least be responsible about it, right? We're not going to eradicate this phrase of research democratization or democratizing research. So let's at least be responsible about it. And the first thing we need to do in order to be responsible is we need to get clear on what our definition of democracy is, right? We need to be able to answer who rules. We need to have someone who has veto power. Not everybody gets to dictate what methodologies we use. We need someone to say that's a bad idea. Don't do that research. We need to know what a governance model looks like. That's a constitution, right? And that constitution, that governance model needs to have some enforcement power. You can't just have a constitution and not be able, or rules and structures and not be able to enforce it. And you need to know what your culture looks like. What's the reputation of research? What's it looking like? What's it feeling like? That's your mission statement usually. So kind of rely on your research statement to or your mission statement to enforce what your culture or influence what your culture is. If you don't have at least these three, if you don't have answers to these three things, you're going to end up with anarchy. You need to have some structures to how this democracy is going to work. Otherwise, everyone's going to think that they can do research, and why are you even there? And you need to learn from some real life examples, right? So look at real country democratization efforts. I love this book, The Fate of Young Democracies. I've read it twice and thinking about how to set up a research system. And here are the 4 things that I kind of take away from that. Is 1, avoid in-group out-groups. You need to build trust with your stakeholders. You need to build trust with your PMs, your engineering partners, your devs and designers. They need to feel like they're part of this, but also you need to maintain your own identity. The second thing is you got to be flexible and you got to be open to continuous improvement. If you come in and you say, this is how we're doing research, no questions asked, no one's going to feel like they're a part of it, right? So you got to be adaptable, and your constitution needs to be flexible as well. Constitutions are amendable. That there's a reason. You also have to embrace empowerment and enfranchisement, but not plebiscites. So people don't get to tell you how to do research, but you do get to listen to them, right? So I like to use a RACI chart: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, to kind of keep people in line, and so people know where they fall in this project and in research. And that goes with the 4th point is rules and structures are your friends, being really open and upfront about rules and responsibilities. The next thing you need to know is that democracy is fragile and requires maintenance. If you are going to build a research democracy, you need to be in it for the long haul. It's not an overnight thing. Sometimes it takes years. You have to build systems and structures and programs. You need to be able to support those programs, and you need to be able to give it the attention it deserves. You can't just throw out templates and say, here you go, friends, do usability studies. That's not going to work, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up with the Dunning-Kruger effect, and you're going to give people all these templates and these plug and chugs, and they're going to feel like they know everything, when actually on the x-axis of competence, they know nothing. They've got a bunch of templates and a bunch of Mad Libs, basically. And they're going to feel like they're gurus. They feel like they know everything, when really they don't, because you've given them just enough rope to get themselves in trouble. You need to be able to support these people throughout their research development process, and a democratization is really a research teaching process. You also need to have an exit strategy. You need to know what happens. What does it look like when democracy fails? What does pushing things back look like, right? Do we even recognize it? And what does it look like when your program's not succeeding? If you can't up front say that, then you need to be really careful about in building this democracy. And So I'm giving you a lot, and I'm just right at time. This is a lot of information. So here's like an easy peasy recipe for democracy. And let me tell you, it's not easy. On my team, we're just about 1 year into it, and it's not easy. We're probably 10% into it, right? Really going through and learning what these rules are, answering all these questions. You might feel a little overwhelmed, and that's okay. This is a learning process. Feel free to reach out to me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Make sure you put a little note in there telling me why you're reaching out to me. Otherwise, I won't respond. And if you ever want to chat about big thinking, big brain questions, reach out. Good night and good luck.
Oh, I think you're muted, Kate.
It is after, well, how many, like, we've been on these virtual for like 10 years, and I'm still keeping myself muted. Karen's got so much passion. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But I'd never thought about thinking through. I mean, it sounds ridiculous because democracy is it's the word that governs a lot of the politics of the world, not all of it, obviously. But I love that she brings that political view. What can we learn from the way countries are run and how we run, how people share knowledge?
Yeah, it's some real first principle thinking right there, getting to the root of what does
Yeah.
this word actually mean in society. You really brought it full circle, and there's so many rich analogies and segments of that. So amazing job.
Yeah. So we've got this from Stephanie. Oh, it's just Lauren, can you pop that up again? Is it easy to do? She says, "Give me a second. The best thing about deciding democracy is dead is that you get to decide what it means to you." And it's true. Like Carolyn, that's a very empowering talk about how do you really kind of step back and think through what are you even trying to achieve? It's not just about throwing tools at a bunch of people and saying get on with it yourself or supporting them with training or really kind of digging back into what kind of culture, civic environment do you want to create through the form and the structure of engagement that you create. So it does deliver a lot of freedom about deciding about how you do things, why you do them, which is, I love the word strategy. And it goes back to what is your strategy, what you want to achieve, why are you doing this? Very,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. No two democracies are the same, and therefore no two organizations should have the same approach to research democratization. And that's part of the fun. You all get to go to
Mhm.
different organizations, figure out what they really need, and implement the right systems to bring the user voice to whoever needs it. So that's what we're all here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what makes the job of research ops so fascinating because there is never a lot of people say, oh, what's the recipe? And no, there is no recipe. Every day is a new day in the kitchen, which is why it's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Should we hop to the next one? I think we've got Casey Garland. Yeah.
Let's
Casey's
do it.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of his amazing talks. Let's dig in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Gollin, and I'm a research ops practitioner at IBM. And today, we're not just talking about democratizing UX research, but democratizing the platforms themselves. Once upon a time, there was a research tool that had it all. It allowed researchers to do their work faster and better than ever. It spread like wildfire across teams in the company. A few designers and product managers started getting access to the platform, and they were also easily able to run simple studies like a click test or a tree test. And then a private equity firm with a vast portfolio of B2B enterprise SaaS acquired the research platform and its biggest competitor and decided to merge the two. The platform was essentially abandoned for a year, while a pile of unaddressed feature requests and bugs continued to grow. Meanwhile, product teams across the company were coming on board to the idea of continuous discovery and clamoring for tools like this that could make their process easier and more rigorous. When renewals came around, the platform's sales team hiked prices 400% in an attempt to squeeze more and more profit out of the same broken old tool. And at the same time, the company decided that subscription software was out of control, and they committed from the top down to reduce spend. So the research platform's future seems to hang in the balance. Adding in a new vendor would take at least 6 months and would require retraining the entire org if it even passed the gauntlet of CIO, procurement, privacy, legal, and finance. So the company had to scale back access to the dusty old research platform, and dreams of self-serve access to research tools were punted to the next budget cycle. I'm going to leave this story as a cliffhanger because I honestly don't know how it ends. But I do know that many of my peers in the Cha-Cha Club and the ResearchOps community are going through similar struggles right now with software evaluations, negotiations, and procurement. And problems like this are not isolated to one platform, one vendor, or one customer. So let's talk about an emerging alternative, which I call open research platforms. Beyond the platforms that you might think of when you picture established enterprise solutions or cool new startups, there's an emerging category of open source competitors. As you can see in the bottom, there's a little bit of a gap and an opportunity for more open source software to be created in the space around conducting research. Let's take a closer look at the difference between closed and open platforms. Open source means that you can actually access the code. Instead of lobbying for roadmap items, you could go ahead and implement them yourself. And you could even contribute back so the entire user base could benefit from this. It's really a community-oriented model. And in terms of cost, open source doesn't always mean free, but it's typically transparent. So why is this important for research? Tools have pedagogies. They embed certain beliefs about how research is done. When I think of democratization, today, I think just about expanding access to UXR tools to other kinds of people in the company, and maybe giving them a playbook or some structure for assistance. But if we expand the idea of what research software could be, you could imagine new ways to co-create insights across the company. Most off-the-shelf research software starts with the idea of a research study, but you could envision a totally different model, more like Wikipedia, where anyone in the company could collaborate on questions or topics. What do we collectively know about this area? Another possibility that I haven't found available in the market is the ability to really connect UX research to product impact. Because this doesn't exist, this is something that our team has been building internally. For any initiative, we can see how it was validated methodically and rigorously. We can actually follow the path of impact all the way through to usage and revenue. The designer Maggie Appleton recently gave a talk on what she calls homegrown software, where she identifies people like teachers, and I would add research ops practitioners, as technically savvy people that are trying to solve problems for themselves and the people around them, often using spreadsheets and no-code tools, but really pushing them to their limits. You start to hit a wall when you try to jump from your Airtable or Notion to something as robust as the applications on the market today. Maggie predicts that these kind of folks will soon become end-user programmers, or what she calls barefoot programmers. These are users who can create software and systems that meet the specific needs of people around them. If you're not an engineer or on a team of developers, you might be wondering, how do we get here? Another kind of democratization is taking shape: software development. It sounds wacky until you watch videos like this one of an 8-year-old girl that creates her own platform for messaging with Harry Potter just by describing in plain language what she's trying to do. So you don't need a PhD in prompting to create something. If you do have a knack for distilling a complex and nuanced process like UX research into a set of steps, you'll soon be able to use that same skill to literally create platforms out of your playbooks. I've shifted from thinking of my team as a research operations team to something more like a research platform team, owning the building blocks that other teams use to ship impact. Platforms help achieve goals like scaling and moving faster. With open platforms in mind, let's envision a different ending to the research platform procurement disaster. Flashing back to that fateful merger between the two platforms, imagine that a third, fourth, and fifth open source alternative was readily available for use, part of a thriving ecosystem of open source experimentation around research tools. And it didn't really take that much effort to procure and get going because the open platform could be hosted internally on trusted infrastructure. It only took one click to migrate old data to the new platform, and the pricing was transparent and a fraction of the cost. So it was reasonable to make these tools available to anyone in the company to co-create insights, not just design and product, but sales, support, and engineering. The team was able to build new features which fit the company's unique way of working and method of tracking impact, and they were able to contribute these back to the community through the open ecosystem. New forums also opened up within communities like the ResearchOps community and the Cha-Cha Club, where professionals across companies could workshop new methods and new approaches and actually share implementations in an actionable way. So that's a pretty different world from the one we're living in today. Let's look back and quickly recap what we've talked about. SaaS can really be a nightmare, even when you're going with the safe enterprisey option. It's not a safe bet for democratization. Open research platforms are an emerging alternative with many benefits, and especially the opportunity to create new forms of research, not just add users as a way of democratizing research. And finally, research ops practitioners are in exactly the right position to influence this kind of change. We're already the ones that are writing the playbooks, and soon we'll be writing the software. My prediction is that ops teams in the coming years are going to become the platform builders. Thanks again to Cha-Cha Club and Rally for organizing this awesome event, and feel free to get in touch if you're interested in continuing to discuss these ideas.
Wow. Aaron, I don't know about you, but I feel that I would need to watch that talk countless times and really unpick parts of it to get as much of it as possible in my head.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so many insightful parts in there, Casey. Definitely also another individual who subscribed to first principle thinking and really bucking all the concepts and trends that we have in today's world. And yeah, I really like this quote from Graham. I think I may know which Graham it is, but tools embedding beliefs about how research is done. Yeah, absolutely. We have to be on the lookout.
I often think about, actually, not that I'm wanting to punt my book, but I speak about civic design being an inspiration for research systems because it's people systems. And it's exactly the if you go to Paris, they've got the wide boulevards that creates a certain atmosphere. In New York, you've got your the skyscrapers and narrow streets and lots of cars. And so it creates a certain vibe. And it's the same with the infrastructure we put in place. It creates a certain culture and atmosphere around how do we learn together? How do we dig knowledge up together? So it's again, like I find interesting that Casey's speaking about open source platforms. Kara was talking about democracy, and within that, that was a word of control, but also freedom. And so even though we're using different words, it's really going for that same, I feel like the ethos is the same. They can tell me if I've got that wrong when they hop on later.
Yeah.
Lauren, did you want to fire up the poll? We had a poll, which we had. So dive into this. The poll is going already. That's great. So, is democratizing research an absolute must? Wow, we've got 37% saying it is. Is there a choice? 58%. Kara, I wonder if your talk has had some impact on that. And 4% terrible idea. Wow, that's great. Well, keep answering that poll. We'll look at the results right at the end.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you again, Casey. I do have to say that your original blog post a couple years ago on open research platforms was a massive inspiration for not only myself, but our whole team at Rally and how we've built our platform from the ground up. While it's not open sourced, we do prioritize APIs, connection with the other tools in the stack, and know that information needs to freely flow from platform to platform, and there's no one size fits all solution for any organization. And having that flexibility in place for your tooling stack to meet the ever-evolving needs of your own research democracy is just paramount. So thank you for all your work.
I just saw Carolyn said, full disclosure, I'm the one who voted a terrible idea. Lots of laughs. Okay, I think let's hop on to the next one. We have got Jess Lewis from Kaluza.
Hi, my name is Jess Lewis, and today I'm going to talk about democratization and how it can power advocacy. I've spent 10 years working in the research operations space, specialising initially in user recruitment, and now I am a research operations generalist, which means I cover all aspects of the research operations role. I grew up in a small village nestled between two national parks in the northwest of England. And sheep farming is one of the main industries up there, and you'll understand shortly why I've mentioned this. The three main topics of my talk are democratization is a tactic, thinking in risks and not threats, and the end goal is access to research. Firstly, democratization as a tactic. I'd like us to reframe democratization for it to be seen as a tool that people, especially research operations folk, can utilise, rather than something that's a strategic choice. And the reason that I don't think democratisation should be the strategy, people are going to do it anyway. Whether or not you have the word democratisation in your strategy, people will do user research. And the reason is, I think it's well enough established now how important some aspect of research is to internal business decisions. There are common research behaviours that happen in many businesses. For example, stakeholder discussions, requirements gathering, A/B testing. These are all ways in which people such as product managers, business analysts, and developers can get to know a bit more about their users. How are people using our products and services? How well is our service working for them? But these research behaviours are not the same as user research. And seeing these behaviours grow doesn't necessarily mean that that traditional view of democratized research, that more people doing research, it doesn't mean that it's a success. It doesn't mean that the quality of research is actually going up. And this is why I want to reframe it to a tactic. And that's what also brings me back to sheep. The last time I was up north, I came across a really common scene. Lone sheep had escaped from a field. It was just doing its job, which was to find the best grass. And it's the same as any other business process. There will always be people who look for a different route, an alternative way, a workaround. And that's why I think research operations, supporting democratization in that traditional sense of enabling more people to do research, is a really difficult task to set yourself. Instead, seeing democratization as a tool you can use is a much more helpful framing. It enables you to think about risks instead of threats. That traditional view, and I think perhaps a previous misconception of democratization, it meant that anyone, no matter their role, could do research. Now that, I think in some aspects, can feel a bit threatening to researchers. It can potentially look like it's devaluing the work of researchers. perhaps diluting down the value of research even by suggesting that anyone can do it regardless as to their skill set, and also potentially puts pressure on other people outside of research to do research, even though maybe they don't feel particularly comfortable with all aspects of the end-to-end research process. Lisa Reichelt, who coined the phrase research democratization, has also written about some of the challenges and the organizational forces which are at play that impact the way in which democratization is adopted and embedded. And these forces aren't necessarily within your sphere of influence or control. Let's take things back to the definition of the word democratization and the simple act of making something accessible to everyone. And if you think about risks, they can be managed and mitigated. So thinking about if you were to make your research process transparent so that anyone can take a look at how you've come to those insights, what are the risks posed by opening that up? What are the risks posed by opening up your research repository so that anybody can come and watch previous research sessions? What are the risks that you need to then look at managing? And I also really like this quote from Ed Lyon, who is research operations at WISE. He was talking on a webinar recently about democratization, and he said that it's a mindset, prepare for it, embrace it. And it got me thinking about what are the ways in which, as a research operations person, you can be prepared and embrace democratization and more people accessing the research process. And that was thinking about the risks. And again, going back to my sheep analogy, I don't know if this is just something that happens at country fairs in the Northwest, but if you've ever seen a sheepdog herding sheep, with simple instructions from the farmer, the sheepdog slowly nudges the sheep this way and that until they are gradually rounded up in a pen. And again, this framing of democratization being a tool gives you that same thinking of instead of trying to encourage everyone to do research, you're thinking about how is research being accessed by people? How can we help to nudge them in the right direction so that they can utilize this research to ultimately result in better informed decisions that result in more user-centered products? So that brings me on to my last point, which is the goal isn't necessarily to get more people doing the research, it's just to get more access to research. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means now. So I talked about advocacy. Now I think it's worth just explaining what that means and my understanding of it, because I don't think it's necessarily talked about a great deal, but advocacy to me is something that underpins every other aspect of research operations. And it's so important in the work that I do to have great advocates to build those relationships within the business. This model that I'm showing here is from a Nielsen Norman Group blog post. And in the post, they say advocacy is concerned with how the value of UX research is defined and communicated to the rest of the organization. So great advocates and good relationships, it can open lots of doors. Democratization enables you to show people, not just tell them about the value of research. So I'm going to give you an example of how that happened. So I support a squad who have a brilliant culture of building research into the product development process, but there are opportunities to increase the rigor of research and make some aspects more accessible and create more space for that research to happen. So there was a squad day back in May, and I knew it would be a cross-functional group of people all in one place, in person. And just like the pre-COVID days, I wanted to create a group observation experience. This is something that is really tricky to do in a remote hybrid working world that many companies now exist in. So the end goal wasn't for people to come away from that experience and go, I can go off and do my own research now. It was to help remind people of why actually this is really important and this is how we're going to make our products better. We created an in-person observation experience by having live research happen on the day, have a group of people in a room and watch the session on a big screen. We then had a group discussion afterwards, again, a cross-functional group of people immediately after observing research, having a conversation. Again, something that we don't commonly do anymore. And it was really successful. It sparked a brilliant conversation. Things were taken away from that and taken into work streams. And I think there's a real appetite, I hope, to do something similar later in the year. And doing this work helps you to build that crowd of advocates. It helps people understand, actually, those people organising who saw me organising the research for the squad day understand how much goes into each research session that you coordinate and the work that has to happen around either side of the research. And part of increasing accessibility is helping to educate people and compliance, taking a slide deck to go, these are the steps that you have to do to organise research. So that's a bit boring. Whereas actually taking people on that journey and showing them the work that you're doing is so much more powerful and memorable. And ultimately gets you to your end goal of having all the research happen in a more systematic way, having research joined up, having people walking along the same kind of route with how they're approaching their research. It enables you to play to people's strengths as well, working more closely with them. You're not putting the pressure on people to do research, something that maybe they don't feel comfortable with, or working with them more closely to support them in that end-to-end process and the steps that they're not necessarily as comfortable with. So democratization is a tactic. Think about the risks that you can manage. It's not a threat. And think about access to research rather than encouraging more doing of research. Thanks so much. I'm Jess Lewis, and you can find me on LinkedIn and Medium.
We have got some really funny conversation going on. This is Graham helps to explain why I keep biting people at work. Sarcasm. I love the idea of research ops being. I know this is not wasn't the entire point, but being like a sheepdog and kind of gathering everybody together and getting them into the same place and on the same mission.
Yeah, I thought that was a excellent analogy. I don't know. I wonder if the stakeholders would like to be likened to sheep in this analogy, but maybe we can figure that one out. But I did love the overall approach of leaning into the risks and kind of tackling problems head on. I think when it comes to this, someone else had a point about water will find its way. People will find their way to talk to customers and to get in front of users, and tackling these problems head on and leaning into them, meeting people where they are, as opposed to fighting tooth and nail, which is not fun and never works. I think just leads to the promised land, which is having all the sheep in one place as opposed to all over the pasture, just roaming around.
Here's one from DL. Always describe myself as a Sherpa on the research journey, guiding my teams. I love that. Wow. Anyone who knows me knows that I love a metaphor or an analogy, and I'm just in heaven, heaven today with all these amazing metaphors. I've been watching our time a little bit. Let's hop on to our next talk, which is from Arturo, who works for Turo. Let's see. If that's our first snag for the day, we're doing pretty well. Arturo's one doesn't seem to be working. Should we skip on to Saskia and we'll come back to Arturo? So we've got Saskia from Monzo Bank.
Hello, I'm Saskia Liebenberg and I work at Monzo Bank, leading research operations with a team of 15 researchers and many, many people who do research. I've been working in this field of research ops for around 6 years now. I live in Newcastle in the northeast of the UK by the sea, and I love all things research ops. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to speak about my favorite topic with you. And the theme I'd like to explore with you today is this, that operations can only take you so far in this journey of democratized research. So our theme is operationalizing democratized research, and I want to unpack that a little bit. First of all, democratization is about making the doing of research accessible to non-researchers. And operationalizing is about making the doing of research ready for use, making it functional. So the question is, how can research ops have the most impact in making it possible for non-researchers to do their own research in a good or good enough way? And the key here is operations only takes you so far. There's this fallacy that anyone can do research and it's really easy and straightforward. We just need the ops. But then it doesn't go so well, and non-researchers are completely overwhelmed. And it can feel like a failure on ops' part. But the reality is, anyone can do some research. Not everyone can be a researcher, and therefore there are limits to what a research ops function can do to operationalize democratized research. And I think where research ops can have the most impact is being clear and realistic about what types of research we can operationalize 100%. And then not expecting everyone to actually become a researcher or a de facto researcher, because operations can only take you so far on this journey. So what does that mean? Let's look at what you can operationalize to the max. This is what I have in mind when I talk about some research can be operationalized. It's specific types of research that is more evaluative, to validate or refine or unblock within a defined problem space, and it's key either low risk or repeatable parts of existing roles in line with the expectations and the function of that role. And it's focused on methods that fit into those roles. So unmoderated usability testing for a designer, or proposition testing for a product marketing manager, or copy testing or messaging testing for a writer. Not asking them to run a diary study end to end to define the future of the product. And that means we need to do these three things to really fully operationalize it. We need to fit it in their workflows. We need to enable them to build it from templates. And we need to lean heavily on good tools. It's really important to make sure that we don't just take what works for researchers and lift and shift it for the non-researchers. It really needs to be reimagined to fit into their process and their tool stack with the lowest entry bar possible, or they will find another way. Templates really are the name of the game here. Self-serve, with guidance built in, easy to copy and get to a good enough place in a couple hours to get started. And then tools play such an important role, not only in having reactive switched on support teams that can troubleshoot and unblock non-researchers and anything they're struggling with, but in enabling you to actually build in the guardrails and compliance when it comes to things like data governance, permissions, etc. And you can really heavily lean on your tool stack to do the lifting here and to be the support on this journey. And the result is that research isn't a gatekeeper or a bottleneck for people to be able to do their jobs. And researchers can then focus on the more complex or higher risk research, things that are a bit more discovery or generative, defining that problem space or understanding user needs, etc. And on then developing research capability in some people. And that's the second part of this, which is almost the flip side of the fully operationalized coin. And it's not to say that there isn't operations here, but good operations alone isn't going to cut it for this. And this is where we're talking about maybe a bit more open-ended, more generative, more nuanced or complex types of research. It's less templated, less rinse and repeat. And of course, we can develop training, we can develop guidelines, playbooks, give people access to the right tooling, etc. But really, that's not enough. They need to also have the affinity to do it, the confidence and the capacity to get stuck in and learn how to do the research. And that's not really something that's fully operationalizable. It's something that's developed over time, and it's also not something we can expect of everyone. As we know, of course, everyone should be involved in research. Research is a team sport. This poster from the Government Digital Services in the UK is a good reminder of this. Operations plays a great role in enabling people to have access to existing research and getting involved in it. And this is a really good way for the researchers to then identify who has that interest and affinity that they can develop further. So things like access to research calendars or sessions coming up, observer rooms where they can view and take notes, note-taking templates, easy access to research findings or research plans, etc. All of that's not enough, though. The real game changer here is when researchers can coach those non-researchers one-to-one and build up their exposure and confidence in doing research over time. So how I've seen this work well is to start with something basic like note-taking. Have them be the lead note-taker during the sessions. Then maybe have them moderate some of the sessions. Maybe have them lead some of the material development or the analysis workshops and collaborate really closely together on that to build that confidence. So there's much more researcher-led in small groups or maybe even one-to-one. It's a lot more intensive and a lot more in the moment. But it really helps to coach the non-researcher through all of these phases, helping them to get to a really good setup. And it takes time. It's not going to solve any capacity issues right away. Again, operations is supporting here in the coaching process with things like research office hours, training courses or modules that people can do, clear guidelines, access to the right tools, etc. But the game changer here is really that researcher ability to coach and enable and build confidence in the context, as well as the non-researcher having that interest and the capacity to spend the time and develop their skills. So in summary, this is how I think research ops can really set democratized research up for success, by being clear and realistic about what types of research we can fully operationalize, and when and who we should enable to do more capital R research. So anyone can.
I do know that Saskia ended her talk pretty quickly. I'm going to make a note for Lauren in the backstage. Lauren, we'll give Arturo's talk a try in a moment again and see if we can get it working. Here we go. This is from Angela. I say, not everyone can do good research, but a good research can come from anywhere. And the thing that I'm hearing, Aaron, throughout all of these talks really is the same message of define what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Be specific. Saskia said, be specific about roles. So good researchers can come from anywhere and they can have that affinity, that confidence, the skills and everything to do whatever sorts of research that they want. But for others, decide what sorts of things you want to develop in them, what kinds of confidence and affinity, and therefore what kinds of tools, so that you can then, stealing from Jess's talk, manage the risks around those things more clearly too, and also generate the most out of those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a really interesting trend around enablement here. And actually, Graham just put a great comment here. Many orgs may be better off with research engagement programs rather than full-on democratization programs. One of the things I love doing with research ops is drawing an analogy to other ops fields that have been around for a little bit longer, a bit more mature. For example, sales ops, where you go into any large organization with a sales team, they have a very well built out sales ops function. They started as Salesforce admins working with tools and gradually evolved into their special roles, for example, like a sales trainer that teaches all the salespeople all the fundamental skills for how to go about running a sales process and how do you demo our new products and everything. I can definitely see a world with research ops where there is a research enablement manager, a research training leader that teaches people how to be involved in research, how to listen actively in a user interview, how to run this process or be involved in this process, and some really interesting stuff there.
Actually, when I was working at Atlassian, I hired a full-time education specialist who had no experience in the research space, but had worked in pedagogy and was a specialist education designer. And she did an incredible job of bringing her education skills into creating trainings and even the playbooks and how do people learn and what sort of materials do we need to enable hundreds of people to be able to do usability testing, for instance. So I think there's definitely a space there for that. Let's try Arturo's talk again and see if we have some luck. Otherwise, we will fix it. Nope, not so much. So we'll move on to Casey, and I will see if I can load up Arturo's talk in the background again. Hopefully we don't have the same problem. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Casey Canlis, and I'm a research operations leader. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about democratized research operationalized. So you may be wondering, what is democratized research? It's not something new. Everybody wants it and they want it right now. It's essentially how you can upskill someone, and there's quite a large range of what it could actually mean. So when my manager came to me and he was like, I have a new goal for you. I think that we should do research democratization. I was like, I'm on board. Level up everyone's skills in research. That sounds great. I'd done this before successfully. I looked through my roadmap and I was like, yeah, sure. I can fit this in here. I'll make it happen. So how did I do it? I didn't. I had to consider several factors. And if any of these weren't right, it would make success that much harder. And while it's a bummer that this didn't work, I learned what was needed in the future for it to work. So I want to share all of that with you. The first factor is time. It was halfway through the year. I'd already accomplished a lot of what I had on my roadmap, but I hadn't realized how many of my items were actually not one and done. So I would accomplish it, but then there was still something that might need to be done. I'd have tools procured, but then we'd still have renewals, or we need to track usage. And the amount of effort to not only set up research democratization, but to improve it and maintain it, as any operations person knows, you can't know the unknown. You don't know what's going to show up in your backlog without any warning and maybe need more of your time. And in my case, this was a huge factor that came into play. We had a team of 2. I had hired somebody to handle participant management, but they still needed training. They still needed guidance. And we had a big panel launch coming up. And then there were 2 of us, and we were juggling 12 recruitment efforts at a time. So that's quite a lot already. And we had procured tools, but there was still usage to track, accounts to set up, training, and there was a little day-to-day problem solving that you never knew what was going to show up on your desk to fix. And so competing priorities meant that something needed to be pushed back. And in this situation, it normally means that you focus on the time-sensitive items. Those will always prevail. So factor number 2 is recognizing your environment. What is your company focused on? Where do their priorities lie? Are they thinking about delivery and showing impact right now? Or are they focused more on looking at the horizon and thinking about long-term stability and growth? Because if it's in the delivery and deliver stage, you're going to have trouble with leadership buy-in from both research and design. Because, for example, if you have somebody that is a designer that's being trained and upskilled, that takes away time that they could be delivering certain things to their product teams. And the maturity of both teams also needs to be there as well. There needs to be a foundation in place where design and research leadership agree that they can dedicate the time and they can dedicate the resources to having an upskilled organization. So factor number 3 is about being clear and impactful. All leadership involved need to agree on what democratization means for right now. As I said before, there is a huge range of what democratization could mean. It could be making insights available to the company so they have more informed decisions in the future. It could be training designers or whoever may be interacting with customers how to ask the right questions. So what you need to think about is, at first, start small. You can have the greatest idea, like the most phenomenal research democratization in mind, but when you start out, you want to make sure that you say, what is the smallest amount of effort I can have in order to show impact? And you also need to have both sides agree on what is the measurable impact. Because it's important to show that you maybe have the most wonderful resources that you've created, but if nobody looks at it, then it's not impactful. It's not actually making that change that you want. And factor number 4, this is actually the most important and one that I didn't have any trouble with at all. I had an amazing amount of research champions that I could talk to and draw on. These are cross-functional partners. They're the ones that lean into research. I'm sure you can already identify who they are. They're the ones that are always interested in something new. They're known for sharing tips, tricks. They're like your unsung heroes. And the best part about having a research champion or multiple champions is they are the people that are on the inside. They speak the language of who you're trying to talk to. They know your audience. So if that's designers and you have a designer that has been eager to do research, has leaned in on research, that's the perfect person because they'll be able to tell you when something doesn't make sense. They'll be able to tell you how you could work something or how you could change your materials so it appeals more to your larger audience. And so what you want to do is you want to think fun, not funnel. You want to make sure that whatever you create, it's interesting enough to keep their attention, and that you're also spreading out the amount of work that you have across everyone. So talk to your research champions, encourage them to give you feedback, help them level up their skills, and tell them, speak up if this doesn't make sense. Speak up if it's too wordy or if I've just given you too much material and you can't process it. Like, they're willing to learn. They will be your best advocate for democratization. And because you have such a spread out knowledge across your research champions, they can also help others. So it doesn't just rely on you or the other researchers. So slowly but surely, your funnel will expand and you'll have a lot more people that are able to help upskill others. So should you democratize research right now? One of the things you should think of, time. Do you currently have the time available to plan and implement and maintain democratized research? Environment, when you look around it, do you think that your teams are at a level of UX maturity where this effort will be supported by both research and design leadership? Is there clarity on what democratized research means? And do you know how you will measure it to make sure that it is impactful? Also, where is your company's priorities? Are they in deliver, or are they looking at long-term growth and stability? Because if so, the long-term growth and stability might be a better time to deliver things. And then research champions. Do you have potential champions that could be in design, PM, development, who are already interested in research, already leaning in, already asking questions and trying to figure out something new? If so, take their advice, take their help, and let them upskill so they can help you in the future. And if you answered yes to all of those factors, then go forth, do great things, and hopefully it will work out super successfully, more so than what mine did. And regardless of what happens, share what you have learned to others in our community, whether it works or not, whether it's like, oh, this part was great, this part was not so great. Tell the community what worked and what didn't, because that's the only way that things will get better. Not everything will succeed, and that's how we learn from it, and that's how we make a better research democratization in the future. Thank you.
Off with the mute. Here we go. Jess Lewis. The effort required to maintain democratization is easily underestimated. I regularly and for years have said that ResearchOps is wildly underestimated, that there's just so much work that goes in because as it has come up in the chat a lot, it's not just about tools as much as the tools are an essential part of it. It's also about the decisions you make about what kinds of things you're going to democratize, how you do it, so the culture you create around it, the sort of sense of freedom or structure, what your environment needs. Is so important.
Yeah, and I think another trend coming out in a lot of these conversations is the fact that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for democratization, and so often the word is met with a unified reaction of either fear or love or something very polarizing. But in reality, there's a big gray area in between for how you all get to define it and build it in your organizations.
Which is not unlike, speaking globally, not just of the US, but it's not unlike the politics of the day at the moment. we've got a lot of inspiration to look at just in terms of how the world's figuring out where it sits.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, really interesting. Let's try our Arturo's talk, and hopefully, Lauren, that will load well now. Others, we've got a backup on YouTube in case it doesn't.
Hello, everybody. Today, I'll share the do's and don'ts of democratization of research. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Arturo Diaz, a senior research operations specialist at Turo with a background in UX research and industrial design. Since establishing the research operations practice at Turo over a year and a half ago, I have streamlined operations and made research more accessible and enhanced the overall impact of the UX research team. Before we go over the do's and don'ts, let's talk about the key elements of democratization of research. To successfully democratize research, we need to bring together three key elements: UX research, research operations, and non-researchers. UX research provides the expertise and methodologies for understanding users and guiding design decisions. This is where deep insights and user-centered approaches originate. Research operations is crucial in ensuring that research practices are scalable and efficient. Research operations manage the tool, processes, and logistics, making research more accessible, scalable, and streamlined for the entire organization. Non-researchers represent those across various teams who, although not formally trained in research, can contribute to and benefit from research when given the right tools and guidance. The overlap of these elements is where true democratization of research happens, enabling everyone to contribute and benefit from research insights. At this intersection, we ensure that research is accessible, operationally efficient, and impactful across the organization. Now let's move on to the do's and don'ts. The first do, define non-researchers' capabilities. When thinking about involving non-researchers in a research process, it is important to clearly define what they're capable of. On the left, we have the type of studies that are more likely suited for non-researchers. These involve high problem clarity, low risk of error, and are typically evaluative and unmoderated, like usability tests or first click tests. On the right, we see the studies that are less likely for non-researchers, which include lower problem clarity, higher risk of getting it wrong, and more exploratory or foundational methods, often requiring moderation, such as interviews or contextual inquiries. Defining these distinctions helps set non-researchers up for success while maintaining research quality. The second do, provide coaching and developing guidelines. To empower non-researchers and ensure they can contribute effectively, providing them with the right support is crucial. This means offering coaching and developing clear guidelines and templates. For example, a UX Research 101 course can give them a better understanding of research. Tooling guidelines can help them navigate the tools they'll be using, and test templates can ensure consistency and quality in the research they conduct. By equipping them with these resources, we set them up for success while maintaining the integrity of our research processes. The third do is encourage ethical. Hello, everybody.
We have hit a snag. Arturo, we seem to be having some kind of Mercury retrograde technological issues. What we can do, we definitely want everybody to see, is I can bring up the video on YouTube and skip right to the section where we left off. I think that's the best thing to do. Give me 2 seconds to get that right. And find the spot.
We almost made it through all the videos successfully.
We did.
What is an online event without a little snag?
Exactly. So share screen, and it will be this one. And I think I'm in the right place.
Navigate the tools that they'll be using, and test templates can ensure consistency and quality in the research they conduct. By equipping them with these resources, we set them up for success while maintaining the integrity of our research process. Let's talk about the third one, encourage ethical research practices. Even when democratizing research, it is crucial that we follow the same ethical best practice as any research led by a researcher. This means ensuring informed consent, protecting data and privacy, and providing fair compensation to participants. These principles remain non-negotiable no matter who is conducting the research. Let's go now over the don'ts. Don't skip quality control. When democratizing research, it is essential not to skip quality control. Like with research led by researcher, we must follow a thorough process, but scale appropriately for non-researchers. This including having a well thought out research plan, conducting peer reviews, synthesizing findings carefully, reporting accurately, and storing insights in a repository for future reference. By maintaining these quality standards, we ensure that all research, regardless of who conducts it, meets expectations and impact. The last don't disregard completely research conducted by researchers. While democratizing research is valuable, certain types of research need trained researchers' expertise. When the problem lacks of clarity or when the research is exploratory or foundational, and require complex methodologies. Researchers have the skills and experience to navigate these challenges. Their ability to conduct moderated sessions and apply mixed methods ensures we gain deeper and more nuanced insights for driving impactful decisions. Let's do a recap. To wrap things up, let's go over the key do's and don'ts for democratizing research. First, do define the capabilities of non-researchers clearly. Provide them with the right coaching and guidelines, and always encourage ethical research practice. On the flip side, don't skip quality control. Maintaining high standards is crucial, and don't disregard the value of research conducted by trained researchers, as their expertise is essential for more complex and foundational studies. By following these do's and don'ts, we can democratize research effectively without compromising quality and significance. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.
We made it with just a few technical glitches in there.
That's the plan B, C, and D. Always ready. So
It is,
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
I'm part of operations.
Yeah.
Lauren, why don't we bring everybody in? We're going to do one quote here, type before the cliffhanger. Yes, guidelines and coaching. If you all aren't including that in your research democratization, you might not be setting yourself up for success. It is so true. And again, I always love it when themes keep coming up and things, because it shows that although we're all working on the same thing and we have the same principles, again, to your point earlier, Aaron, like every cake is different. Every scenario just needs a different type of treatment. So we've got 15 minutes, 16 minutes. We've actually managed to stay on time. And now we get to invite the full crew in here. Here they are, live. Jess, you get the prize for the latest night. What time is it for you in the UK?
11:45.
Wow.
I'm normally in bed.
Yeah, I would be too. Well, Aaron, I'm going to hand over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you to Caro, Arturo, Casey, and Jess, and also to the other Casey and to Saskia for the amazing talks. We have the next 15 minutes or so for live Q&A. So if the audience has any burning questions, there's another Casey calling in live.
I'm so
Always
glad he's
outside.
outside.
Yeah.
I know.
Goodness.
True to form.
True to form. He's in a car, though. That's not really quite outside, is it?
We'll count
Knock. I'll roll the window down.
Kate's got a high bar, very high bar. Wonderful. Well, don't see too many questions coming in the chat yet, so we'll kind of wait for those to come in. But in the meantime, maybe one of you wants to share a democratization horror story and a democratization success story. Something that surprised you and delighted you about, a non-researcher coming in and getting it right, and then, that horror story. So I'll leave it to you all, whichever one wants to raise their hand.
I'll go first. So I think that one of the misconception is that a PM or someone can just call a user and consider that research. I think that we have worked so hard in the UX research industry to build some credibility, to build some all these processes and everything that is surrounding. So I think that we should be more cautious about like, hey, this is real research versus just like a phone call with someone. I think having these groups such as the chat chat group and some other resources that now are out there can help us, overcome those barriers.
I think at the same time, if you have somebody that is a PM or whoever it might be jumping on the phone and just chatting with different customers, it never hurts if you have like operations or somebody that has a connection to them where you can share with them, like, do you know about informed consent? And here, would you like to see our informed consent document? And like, maybe think about these things. And you don't have to stem up a whole entire research democratization program at the beginning. If you don't have the time, it's still like a nice thing to give an olive branch to say like, oh, here's an informed consent document. We have everybody sign this beforehand, and just like give them that little piece, and then they're more likely to work with you in the future too, and not just call up someone.
This hits on one of my favorite topics, which is a theme that's come up throughout the talks has been defining. Jess, you had that, Caro, that was really like the bulk of your talk. And something I've run into is that where does research operations and research together put the line of what constitutes research? Because is every customer connection that you have in an organization research? Where do you start drawing the line? We needed to start defining this. I know at Airbnb years ago, they had to define where customer contact versus research started and ended, because otherwise, as operations, you can become responsible for all customer contact. Casey, you're nodding wildly.
It's a hot topic because we've started to look at the term customer touch points in terms of even knowledge management, and it's just such a huge scope, right? Like every customer touch point. So yeah, I really appreciated some of the points today around, what are the limits of ops, and how do we prevent that kind of scope creep?
I'd say it's the same with insight management as well, because although it sometimes feels hard to keep track of because democratization happened at the company I work at several years ago, 3-4 years ago. And definitely, I think we could do with some better definition of where the edges and boundaries of some of that stuff are. But the benefit of that, actually, that I'm seeing now is that product marketing, I had a conversation with a lead business analyst today. There are lots of groups now kind of wanting to bring all of that knowledge together. And we talk about knowledge rather than research insights now, because that the term research insights also kind of means different things to different people. But it is really exciting to sort of see everyone starting to kind of get onto the same page now, because we've all got the same goal at the end of the day. Caro.
I have another like real life political example. Maybe we're all democracies or like this democratization or whatever, but we're not all the same democracy, right? You can even have you could have it as like a confederation or a federation, like the EU, right? The EU is a democracy. Everyone votes in it, right? But each country, sorry, UK folks, but each country has its own little democracy and their own rules and regulations, right? So just because we're talking about research democratization or this like democratization of insights or talking to folks or whatever, I don't think it has to be the same one. Because then if you're going to do that, you are then putting these rules and this culture in this whole system
that's going to work for the research team or the marketing team or sales team or whatever, and you're imposing on everyone, and it's not going to, like, sorry, but I don't think that's going to work unless you have a very small company. Small company, maybe. The company I'm currently at, probably not, right? So maybe it's really like what we should be talking about is like, how do we get these conversations and this cooperation within those groups and among those groups.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a question from the crowd. How have you course corrected when someone, aka non-researchers, have gone rogue? Don't want to be presumptive, but also what were some bigger learnings in those instances for how you maybe refine your democracy over time?
We're all being very polite, aren't we? I think probably we would all agree that it all comes down to relationship building, and that's probably one of the most important factors of being in operations, is that you need to have so many good relationships. And I think if you don't have a relationship in place with that person, it is probably going to be really difficult to do any kind of course correcting. But that's also an opportunity to begin a relationship with that person if you don't have one. But it certainly, I think this is where I loved your talk, Caro, because there's a lot of politics involved in research operations. You know, you've got to think about how do you bring that person around who maybe isn't a believer, they're that unruly, I don't know, don't know enough about politics, but maybe they're Switzerland, that kind of, you know, they're always going to kind of sit neutrally in the middle, maybe not come fully over to your way of thinking. How do you bring them into the fold? That sheep metaphor again, with maybe a more ethical approach or whatever it is that they've maybe done that doesn't kind of align with the way, you know, whatever you've got in your playbook.
With love and patience, and trying to, like, as I said, extend the olive branch. Find somebody that is willing to work with you. I said research champions. I mean it. Like, find somebody that's actually a great example of somebody that wants to learn, wants to research, and then teach them what you can, and they'll go and spread their knowledge. And that's what really, like, helps to actually democratize. It doesn't have to be at that level of we have everything formalized. And I said, like, I failed doing it. We now have a team of 2 people that are full-time doing research education, and they're doing swimmingly. And it's like, it took a year to happen, but thank goodness we had that time to step back and go, no, this isn't the right time. And this needs more than just one person that's able to dedicate like 25% of their time.
I think adding to what you say, Casey, I think it's always like seeing good intentions on people doing research. I think that if they're doing it, they are going the extra mile of their workflow, right? And I think that, you know, like there's some coaching, but always like seeing it as a good experience. You cannot change the past, but you can probably learn from it. And so like, hey, listen, let's work it out, right? I think that probably the questions might be a little bit biased, or might be something. Let's work out like what questions or how can we improve it. And it also gives you feedback to keep improving your program if you have a program.
Another question from Marissa here. Why have non-researchers in your org wanted to do their own quote unquote research in the first place?
I can just answer that question right away. Limited resources. That's the number one, limited resources. I think that when a company starts seeing the benefit of research, you want to do more, right? But sometimes budgets don't allow you for more researchers. So that's when you start exploring those things.
Yeah. Any other themes?
I think for me, certainly, I work in a software business, and I think it's an expected part of certain people's jobs now. You know, a lot of PMs where I work subscribe to the Church of Teresa Torres, and they see that doing actually hands-on doing. They don't necessarily always frame it as research themselves. They would happily say it's a stakeholder discussion. And that is also going back to the previous question. One of the challenges of bringing them into
UX ways of working is they're like, oh, I didn't think I could use that because I'm not in the UX team. Oh, I didn't think my insights lived in your insight library. That's just for researchers, right? And it's like, no, this is, you're welcome here. We're all one team. But certainly I think it's a challenge and a blessing, which is why I think you can't kind of undemocratize in certain industries now, because people they're wise to it. They're going to do it. They've just got their own take, their own lens on research, which brings new challenges.
I love how we've had politics, religion, farming. Who would have thought?
Yes, some clear, amazing analogies across the board. All right, another question here from George. Have you seen any activation of relegating people who do research to augment secondary research tasks to work alongside with the full-time expert researchers?
Would this be like taking notes and like having them help you with analysis and synthesis, if I'm understanding that correctly? Because I actually did help successfully do research democratization at my first company. And we had 4 research leads and we ended up democratizing to 87 people, but it was just slowly like, oh, you're interested? Can you sit in and be a note taker and an observer on my call? And then, oh, okay, I see in your notes that you put this. You might actually want to think about it this way. And then creating a note-taking guide. And so just kind of building that as you go and seeing where things maybe don't work as well. And then going, okay, we'll just update that. We'll iterate. That's fine. And then you can have them start doing their own unmoderated or their own moderate, depending on how comfortable you feel with them, and just making sure there's guardrails there and a researcher to kind of provide that safety net. Interested to hear everybody else's thoughts.
I'd say it's certainly a challenge. One of the things that we want to do more of is, because I work in a B2B, predominantly B2B space, that getting access to our users is a bit of a challenge. And so, looking at, can we go back to when we previously had conversations with this group of people? But I think certainly then we recognize the flaws in the way in which maybe some of that research was conducted, or the way in which it's been documented, which sometimes makes it difficult even just to find it. I'm embarrassed to say, someone's left the business. And so certainly it's an opportunity for us to recognize where we can improve some of our processes.
Kara's doing her knitting. Will we get to see some of it? It's Black Kara's well-known.
Thoughts when I'm in trouble, but anywho, yeah, I'm making a poncho. So.
Very nice.
If y'all ever see me in the future, like on a call and I'm crocheting, it's I'm really listening. That's actually
yeah.
But I'm thinking about this whole democratization thing of like empowering people who do research, and I've been on teams like leading successful efforts for this, and really having people, like Casey said, it starts with having them take notes, having them observe, giving them that little snippet of like, ooh, this is what research is. It's not just like putting together an unmoderated, right? And really showing them why it matters. Why does framing how you frame a question matters? Why are we so focused on this quality control? Getting that across, and then they're like, ooh, can you read my interview script? Ooh, can you do this? And you're like, oh my gosh, I've created monsters. But it's great because they actually do care, but it's really getting that across. And I think, Casey, I think we've chatted about this before, like giving people that little snippet and then really bringing them in. So.
Yeah, it's just like they own a little piece of that, whatever they've done, and they're like, I helped contribute to this. And so then they're also your advocate when you go to read out your responses, and here's what we learned. And there's somebody else that's like, I did that analysis and synthesis. Yep, they're right. And so just having that slow build of advocacy is nice.
So we've got literally 1 minute left. I feel like we could do what we normally do in Chacha and talk forever. If you loved this, which I hope you did, we've got the next event is on, I think there's one before that. Here we go. On the 11th of September. That's next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. Well, it's kind of the same place. It's the same platform. The registration link is going to arrive in the chat, so you can click that link and register now. We'll have obviously different speakers. We're going to have Steph Kingston, Anna Gabor, Laurie, and a host of more people talking about turbocharging participant recruitment. So make sure that you come to that. Again, a massive, massive thanks to Rally for sponsoring Rally Around ResearchOps, for enabling us to get our thoughts down and share them with the world. All of the videos that you've seen today are going to be shared on YouTube. They'll go live on Friday, but they'll also be sent to you via email. If you're registered, you will get an email with access to the videos. So share and listen to your heart's content, dig in deeply because there's so much goodness in there. And then last but not least, catch up with, if you've got a question for someone, like if you're going like, Casey, I really want to know a little bit more about what you're doing there. I'm sure, Casey, you'll be happy for people to drop you a note on LinkedIn for both of our Caseys and for Kara and Jess, Tura, and all the other speakers. Just get in touch with them on LinkedIn. Next time, we're not going to have Casey and Casey with a C and a K.
Boo! We love being together. Put Casey and Casey together from now on.
It's the best.
This is true. Forever. We have to, this is very true. We have
Don't
to have the
break us
Casey
up.
and Casey.
It wasn't our fault we were named this.
This is true. Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Also, thank you, the technology guards, for making things mostly work for us. And we will catch you in exactly 1 week's time.
Thank you, everyone.